If you'd like to join the classes live in the masjid, then click on the link below. Inshallah, it will take you to a Telegram group that has the details of all the class timings, the dates, the days, the addresses and the locations of the masjid. So click on that link and hopefully we'll see you there, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Barakallahu feekum, brothers. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to carry on with our class, Fiqh first, and then we'll go to the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Fiqh is what? Who can remind me? What is the subject Fiqh that we're studying? What is it? Yes, Akhi. It's that's a part of it, but it's more broader than that. Islamic law, but what does that mean? Pardon, sorry?
Rulings pertaining to worship.
Rulings pertaining to worship. Okay, so it's not just worship, it's more than that.
How to pray, the how-tos.
Right. Definitely the how-tos, but prayer, but that's a part of it. It's broader than that.
How to live your life as a good Muslim. Commands and prohibitions.
Those two things. Commands and prohibitions. Commands and prohibitions. Commands and prohibitions. Fiqh is what Allah told you to do. What Allah told you not to do. Actions. And these commands and prohibitions, i.e. rulings, these laws, because remember, a law is either do this or don't do this. Right? The laws of any country are what? Things to do or things to not do. When you go into a classroom and there's class rules, do this or don't do this. So when you study fiqh, you study what Allah wants you to do, what He doesn't want you to do. And these rulings are called ahkam. These ahkam, they run through 4 sections of fiqh. The first is ibadat, worship. The second is al-mu'amalat, which is dealings, money, buying, selling, working, job, renting, loaning. Does that make sense? Anything that is to do with money. The third is family law, which is called fiqhul usra. And the fourth is crime and punishment. And under that, the Shaafi'y, they place jihad. Beautiful. But we're going to start with ibadat first. How Allah wants you to worship Him, how He doesn't want you to worship Him. Do you ever say how you want to worship Allah, or does Allah tell you how to worship Him? If we try to worship Allah based on our terms, we are worshipping Allah without knowledge. And this is called an innovation, bid'ah. And this is from the worst of things. And if a person worshipped Allah without knowledge for his whole life, at the end of the life they're going to get a big fat 0. Because that's not how Allah wanted you to worship Him. Okay. And we said when we talk about ibadat, the types of worship that we study in ibadat is what? What's the greatest act of worship you can do? Salah. Then zakat. Then fasting. Then hajj. And also funeral rites. How to wash a dead body. How to pray in a dead body. How to bury a dead body. What to do at the time that person is dying and dies. Does that make sense? And also slaughtering. We slaughter animals for the sake of Allah. How to do it. This is all ibadat and many things fall under it. But now the salah is the most important thing, right? And there's nothing more important than the salah, right? Okay, then what is the key to the prayer? What is the key that allows you, what is the fi'l, the action that allows you to pray? Taharah. Taharah. Taharah, right? Without Taharah you cannot pray. So then the books of fiqh, the first thing they discuss is Taharah. Taharah. We took the virtues of Taharah, some of the great things that make Taharah so special, right? And we mentioned 9 of them last week. Allah forgives you based on Taharah. Allah loves you based on Taharah, right? And we talked about many things. Allah connected Taharah to takbir, glorifying and magnifying the greatness of Allah Azza wa Jal. So there are many things that show Taharah is great. Why in fiqh it's studied here? Because you can't pray without this. You can't do tawaf around the Kaaba without this. Taharah is needed. Does that make sense? And we said that Taharah is half of Iman, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, At-tuhur shatrul Iman. Or kama qal, he said that the Tahara, purifying yourself, is half of Iman, because the other half of Iman is Salah, because Allah referred to Salah as Iman in the Quran. Okay, beautiful, good. Guys, you have to revise. The videos of the lessons all get uploaded. You must revise, you must revise. Look over your notes. Because fiqh has a lot of information and it's going to run over your head. Does that make sense? We're going to go into Kitab At-Taharah. We're going to go into Taharah now. In Taharah, we're going to learn many things. We're going to learn the definition of Taharah. Inshallah, we're going to take that today. What is Taharah? What is purification? What does that even mean? We're going to learn about water. Why? Because water is how you do, is what you used to do Taharah with. We're going to also talk about wudu. We're going to talk about ghusl. Because wudu and ghusl are the two things by means of which you do Taharah. We're going to talk about tayammum. Tayammum is when you don't have water. How do you purify yourself? We're going to talk about things that are filthy, that are unclean, that if they're on you, you can't pray. And we're going to talk about how to clean those things. We're also going to talk about wiping over the socks, right? We're also going to talk about the menstrual cycle. Why? Because when a woman's on her menses, she can't pray. And that, by the way, is one of the most complicated chapters of fiqh. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, I spent 9 years trying to understand the section about the menses. It's very complicated. The scholars said Allah tested women with menses and He tested the men with understanding it. It's very complicated. Just the way our, mashallah, sisters and the woman is generally quite a complicated, Allah Mubarak, thing. I don't mean the word thing to objectify them. I just couldn't think of what I think, just the women, mashallah, are complicated. As the married brothers know, their tahara is also very complicated. And we'll talk more about that, inshallah ta'ala, when we come to it. In the book of Tahara, when we do more advanced stuff, there's a lot more stuff that's studied. From the things that's studied in Tahara is cutting your nails. From the things that's studied in Tahara is circumcision. From the things that are studied in Tahara, for example, is trimming the mustache. From the thing that studied, many things, Tahara, many things. Even we study the beard in hadith that are pertaining to Tahara sometimes. So there's a lot, but we're going to just take the main sections of Tahara and we're going to take them in a very summarized way. Sometimes I'm going to give you evidence, sometimes I'm not going to give you evidence. The reason I'm not going to give you evidence is not because there's not an evidence for it, you're not going to understand the evidence right now. And sometimes because I really love the evidence, I'm going to force myself to give it to you anyway, and you're going to look at me with blank faces. I don't know what you just said. You know why? Because in order to understand the evidence, you need to study a subject called Usul al-Fiqh. That's a subject that helps you understand the dalil. And the way fiqh works is that every level you study, you learn more dalil, difference of opinion. We grow like that. But you also have to study this subject called Usul al-Fiqh. A lot of people differ, difference of opinion, this, that, and the other. Akhi, you don't even understand what a dalil, how it works in the first place. Does that make sense? But me, I can't help myself. I have to give dalil. I can't not. So when I find that it's going to take half an hour to even explain the dalil here, I'm not going to. You know why? Because at this stage, you just need to know how to worship Allah. You just need to know wudu. What do I do? What do I do? Ghusl, what do I do? What do I do? Just tell me how to do it. That's the first stage of seeking knowledge. Just how can I benefit myself? The second stage is we grow. And does that make sense? Okay, beautiful. Fiqh is not easy. I'm telling you right now. This is tough. And I'm going to really try and simplify as much as I possibly can. So we need a lot of interaction. I need to throw your hand in the air if we don't understand. Is that clear? And the sisters need to find a way to communicate if they don't understand. I'm sure there's a sister there and there's some child that hasn't hit puberty that's in there that can bring us questions on a piece of paper or something like that. The first thing we're going to start off by doing is defining what Tahara is. What is Tahara? Imam An Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he's a great Imam of Hadith. He's a great Imam of the Shaafi'y madhab. He is a scholar that has written books in particular areas, and the area where he wrote that book, it's the best book in that area. For example, he explained the Sahih of Imam Muslim, and it's the best explanation of Sahih Muslim. He compiled a summary of the Prophet ﷺ's hadith called the 40 Hadith of Imam An Nawawi, and it's the most common one, and it's rare that you find a student of knowledge that hasn't memorized it. In fact, it's not better than Sahih Bukhari, don't ever think that. But he's got a book that's more widespread than Sahih Bukhari, which is Riyadh al-Salihin. Put your hand up if you heard of Riyadh al-Salihin. It's in everyone's bookshelf. There will be masajid will not have, I guarantee you there's a copy of Riyadh al-Salihin somewhere there. They won't have Sahih Bukhari, but they'll have Riyadh al-Salihin. Almost every masjid. Notice, I didn't say his book is better than Sahih Bukhari. No. Sahih Bukhari is the best out of all the hadith books. But it's more common. Imam An Nawawi is a great scholar. I'm going to give you his definition. What makes him so great and what is the role he plays in the Shaafi'y madhab? It's too early to know. It's too early to know, but I don't want to get sidetracked. But just know we're going to mention An Nawawi a lot. Imam An Nawawi's name comes up a lot when you study the fiqh of Imam Shaafi'y. It comes up anywhere when you study fiqh, but specifically the fiqh of Imam Shaafi'y, that name An Nawawi, it comes up a lot. Why does it come up a lot? What's the role that he plays? We might make a separate lecture on that. Definitely, as we grow and we develop, and inshallah ta'ala, you guys grow in your seeking of knowledge, you'll come across it. But right now, all you need to know is that there is an Imam called An Nawawi, and he's important when it comes to the madhab, and he's referenced a lot. There are other Imams as well, but he is one of the most common ones. Okay? He defined Taharah. We're going to take his definition. He said it is, and I want you to write the Arabic. And if you can't write Arabic, sound it out and write the Arabic in English. Then we're going to translate it. Inshallah ta'ala. And we're going to stop over each and every single part till you understand it. Is that clear? And I want you to memorize the Arabic definition by next week. I want you to memorize it. These definitions are very important to memorize. Okay? It is, he said, Taharah, it is Raf'u Hadath. Raf'u Hadath. I'll explain to you what it means after. Just write it down. It is Raf'u Hadath. أو إزالة نجس. أو إزالة نجس. It is رفع حدث. أو إزالة نجس. أو في معناهما. أو في معناهما. أو في معناهما. Last part. أو على صورتهما. أو على صورتهما. I'll repeat it. It is رفع حدث أو إزالة نجس أو في معناهما أو على صورتهما. Let's go down. We're going to break down each part step by step. رفع حدث. He said Taharah is all of these things. It is رفع حدث. Taharah is إزالة نجس أو في معناهما أو على صورتهما. So Taharah is how many things? 4 things. It's رفع حدث, إزالة نجس أو في معناهما أو على صورتهما. It's 4 things. The first thing, رفع حدث. Understand, it is رفع حدث. رفع حدث means uplifting a state of impurity. Write it down. Uplifting a state of impurity. Impurity is of 2 types. The first type of impurity is a state of impurity. The second type of impurity is a physical impurity. Let me give you an example. A state of impurity is like passing wind. If you have wudu and you pass wind, has your wudu broken? Have you entered into a state of impurity? You have, right? Is there anything impure on you though? Are you dirty? Are you unclean? Are you unclean? But you can't pray. Why? Why can't you pray? You're not dirty, you're not impure, but you're in a state that's impure. You're in a state that is impure. Does that make sense? If you have feces on you, are you in a state that's impure? Not necessarily. You might have done wudu and you have urine on your hands. Maybe you're cleaning a baby and there's urine on your hands now. Has it broken your wudu? No. But you cannot pray. Why? Because you have a physical impurity on you. So then the reason why you cannot pray is either because you are in a state of impurity or because you have a physical impurity on you. The state of impurity is called hadath. It's called hadath. Raf'u hadath means I'm uplifting this state of impurity. I'm not uplifting a physical impurity. I'm not removing urine from my hand. I'm not removing feces from myself. I'm not removing blood from myself. There is not a pig on top of me that I have to remove. A pig is impure. No. But I'm in a state that's impure. Perhaps you passed wind. Perhaps you fell asleep. Perhaps you had intercourse with your spouse. All of these things take you to a state of impurity. Does that make sense? The state of impurity is called hadath. Write it down. So the first part of the definition, raf'u hadath, is that I'm uplifting from myself a state of impurity. Now the state of impurity is two types. The state of impurity is two types. The first type is a major state of impurity. The second type is a minor state of impurity. A major state of impurity is called hadathul akbar. Akbar. The major impurity. The minor state of impurity is called hadath al-asghar. Hadath al-asghar. The minor state of impurity. Okay, let's stop now. Stop. Put your pens down, just talk to me now. I said to you that impurity is of how many types? Two types. What are the two types? Huh? No, that's a state of impurity. So there's two types of impurity. What are they? Physical and? Huh? State. Okay. What's an example of a physical impurity? Urine, feces, blood, pig, dog, all of these things. Does that make sense? These are all what? Physical impurities. If it's on you, it doesn't break your wudu. If it's on you, it doesn't break your wudu. But you can't pray until you remove it. Until you remove it. Okay. The other type of impurity is it's not physical. There's nothing, I'm not actually impure. But I'm in a state which is impure, and this state means I cannot now touch the mushaf. I cannot do tawaf around the Kaaba. I cannot pray my salah. There are many things I can't do because I'm in this state. I get out of this state by doing either wudu or ghusl. If it's a major state, I do ghusl, which is a bath. I have a full bath. And we'll explain how to do that bath. If I'm in a major state, a person just had intercourse with their wife, a woman just came off her menstrual cycle, she can't just do wudu and pray. She has to have a bath, a ghusl, a wash. She has to have a wash, a body wash. Does that make sense? If it's a minor state of impurity, you passed wind, you went to the washroom, right? Now you just do wudu. You just do wudu. Okay, good. So when we say raf'u hadath, uplifting from yourself, a state of impurity. And the state is two types. Major, minor. أو إزالة نجس, or removing from yourself impurity. How is the impurity removed? We'll come to it. Don't worry. We'll come to it. Depending on what the type of impurity is. Some impurity you wash. Some impurity you don't wash. Some impurity You do something else too. We'll come to it, inshallah ta'ala. We'll come to it. Is there even one person that's confused so far? Two types of people will not learn. A person who's arrogant, a person who's shy. If you do not understand, ask. 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 Okay, good. The second part, the first part of the definition was uplifting a state of impurity. The second part of the definition was removing a physical impurity, which is called najasah. Najasah. It's a physical impurity. The third part of the definition is أو في معناهما. So tahara is either uplifting a state of impurity, removing a physical impurity, or it's something that comes in the meaning of those two. What do we mean by that? What is the meaning of raf'u hadath and izalatu najas? What's the meaning of this? The meaning of this is I can pray. The meaning, the intent behind doing wudu, doing ghusl and removing impurity from yourself, the intent is what? So that I can what? I can pray my salah. Pay attention. There are some things that are in the meaning of uplifting a state of impurity or removing a physical impurity. But they don't actually uplift the state of impurity, nor do they actually remove. But the reason why they're in the meaning of those two things is because they allow you to pray. Let me give you an example. Tayammum. A person lost their wudu. They are now in a state of impurity, or are they? Are they in a state of tahara, or are they not? They are in a state of hadath. Major or minor? Minor. He passed wind. He broke his wudu. Okay, good. He's traveling. He doesn't find water. He now has to do tayammum. Tayammum is where you do tahara with the earth. We'll talk about how to do it in detail. But it's when you do tahara with the earth. Now the tahara that you do with the earth, is it water? No. Because you haven't done wudu, you're doing a substitute for wudu. You're still in a state of impurity. But you're allowed to pray. If there's water, you do wudu. If you can't find water, you use the earth. But you're still in a state of impurity. So what's the difference? But you're allowed to pray. Which means when the next salah comes, you have to do it again. If I do wudu once and I don't break it, I can last how many salahs? I can pray all 5 if I don't break my wudu. Right? With tayammum, because it's not tahara. Because you're not actually in a state of tahara. It's just allowing you to pray. You have to do tayammum at the beginning of every salah. We'll come to it in detail, inshallah ta'ala. So do you understand how I'm saying it's in the meaning of raf'u hadath, but it's not actually raf'u hadath. You're still in hadath. You're still in a state of impurity, but you're allowed to pray. Clear? Yes, someone had a question. Someone had their hand up. Yes.
Do you have to do, let's say you go home after you've done tayammum, do you have to do wudu straight after?
We'll talk about that. We'll come to tayammum in detail. I just don't want to go off topic. Go on.
Let's say you're in a major state of impurity. Could you do a shower, or does it have to be specifically a bath?
One more time, sorry?
So let's say you're on your menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to specifically have a bath, or can you have a shower as well?
So when we say bath, we mean something that encompasses shower as well. But we'll talk about it. When we come to ghusl, we'll talk about it in detail and you'll learn exactly how to do it. Yes?
Just repeat the definition.
رفع حدث أو في معناهما. In the meaning of those two. So I gave you an example of something being in the meaning of رفع حدث, which is tayammum. Right? Now let me give you an example of something being in the meaning of izalatu najas. Pay attention. I'm going to shock something. Yes, you have a question?
You clarified it.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. I'm going to now ask you a question, and I'm going to baffle you guys. Aman, just move the camera, yeah, because I'm going to stand here, just because this is going to be a shock factor. Okay. when you go to the toilet, how do you clean yourself? With water and tissue. Tissue, back in the days, did they have them? No. What did they have? They had stones. They had stones. Rocks, you know, I don't know the difference. I'm not a geologist, but if there's any experts here, they can correct us, the difference between a stone and a rock. But I think you all know what I mean. Pebbles and them things there. So now pay attention. If a person cleans himself with water, is it enough? If he cleans himself, is it enough? Huh? Yes, it is. But it's better for him to do what? To first use the stones or the tissue paper, and then the water. Why is it best? The reason is because you will not touch the filth with your hands. First, you've removed it with the tissue paper, because your hands are noble. Even though it's your left hand, it's still something, you're a human. لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah said, we honor the children of Adam. So first, you use the tissue paper to remove it. And then what do? Say that again? Let me sit down because the sisters can't see. See, sisters, we are considerate about you. We think about the sisters. We think about the sisters, yes. Okay, if you do what? If you use the tissue and then you use the water, is that good? It's better, it's the best. Because you don't have to touch it with your hands. Okay, if you don't use the tissue paper and you use the water straight, what happens? Will it clean it? But it will smudge first. It will spread first. Does that make sense? And that's a bit long, because you made your Taharah a bit longer now. Does that make sense? Because when water mixes with a substance, what does it do? It mixes with it and it can spread. So the best thing to do is to use the tissue first and the... Okay, let me ask you a question now. What if you only use stones and you only use tissue paper and no water at all? Even if the water's right there, but you're like, I'm not going to use it. Huh? Huh? It's fine. Because the Prophet ﷺ did that. He did that. Pay attention. We're not saying do it. But the reality is that you're not always going to be in a place where there is water. You're not always in a place where there's water. You're going to come into contact with a time where there's no water. So there is a way you can clean yourself with the stone or the tissue paper only that will remove the filth. It will remove the filth even if you're not using the water. Does that make sense? Let me just explain, then I'll come to a question, inshallah ta'ala. So remember, the filth, if it's on you, is looked at from two angles. I need to explain this to you for you to understand the definition. Does that make sense? The filth is looked at from how many angles? The najasah, impurity is looked at from two angles. The first angle is the aynul najasah, the actual thing. So imagine this is something najis. Imagine this is najasah, okay? I don't really want you to, I don't want to say imagine this is feces because I feel uncomfortable about that. But imagine this is impure. This right here, there is an element, this physically is impure, but when I remove it, what's going to remain here? It's something called the athar, the effect, the residue of the impurity. If you've removed the impurity when you're using the toilet, and we're talking about toilet here, we're not talking about anything else right now, only when you go to the washroom. If you remove the impurity, you can't remove the effect without the water, the residue. If that residue remains, you can still pray. You can still pray. Does that make sense? There's conditions to it. There's conditions to it. And it's not as simple as that. We'll talk about the conditions more in detail when we come to how to wash yourself and how to clean yourself. We'll talk about it more when we come to that section of the lesson. But all you need to know for now is what? What do you need to know for now? Is that as long as I remove the Aynul Najasa, the physical element of the Najasa, once I've removed it, if the residue remains, which is called the Athar, the residue, I can still pray. I can still pray. But is the Najasa still there? Yes, not the Ayn. If the Ayn is there, you can't. If the actual Najasa is there, the physical element, you're not allowed to pray. But if you've removed that and all that remains is the residue, which is the part that cannot be removed unless you use water. That's the part that cannot be removed unless you remove the water. The Najasa is there, but it is ma'fuun an. It's forgiven and you can pray. So when he said, "O fi ma'nahuma," in the meaning of those two, wudu, i.e. raf'u hadath, it helps you to pray because you go out of a state of impurity, and izalatul najis helps you to pray because you are removing the impurity. Tayammum doesn't take you out of impurity, but it's in that meaning, i.e. that it lets you pray your salah. And using tissue paper or stones to clean yourself in the toilet doesn't completely remove the najasa. It removes the ayn of the najasa, the physical element of it, but it doesn't remove the athar, i.e. the residue of the najasa. That is still there, but it is forgiven. Is the najasa still there? Yes, but you can pray. So that's what the third part of the definition means. Aw fi ma'nahuma, in the meaning of those two. Okay, yes.
So, let's say if you use tissue paper, would you still be considered to be the same as a tayammum position, or if you use tissue paper alone?
No, they're two different situations, because one's a state of impurity. Look, there are some things that are najasa, that are impure, but they're forgiven. It's called ma'fuun an. For example, if you have a tiny bit of blood on you, is blood impure? But a tiny bit of blood, it doesn't harm you. Because the religion is about ease. Allah doesn't want to make things too hard for you. Some people got waswas. They think, oh my God, there's blood on me, oh my God, I'm not clean, I have to, and start panicking. And then they just spend an hour in the toilet, cleaning everything. Going in and out, they're trying to find holes that don't exist. Does that make sense? And they just clean, and it's like, bro, relax. The religion is easy for you, because shaitan will play with you like that. So it's like, okay, look, this is forgiven. It's excused. It's excused. It's better to remove it, but it's excused. So don't confuse the two. It's not like tayammum. Tayammum is a different type of tahara, or substitute for tahara, and this is a different type of, this is substitute for izalatul najas, not raf'u hadath, okay? Okay, good. Yes.
When using the stones, you have to be three.
We'll talk about that. That's a separate chapter. Right now it's just a definition. I only want you to know, I know I'm going off topic, but I'm only going off topic enough so that you understand the point. But these things, brothers, we're going to spend an hour just talking about how to wash yourself. I'm going to show you how you didn't know this. Inshallah. Don't worry, we're going to spend an hour just talking about it. We're going to come to it. Inshallah, yes. Say that again, sorry?
I heard a hadith, the man was being punished for not washing himself.
Yes, the ayn, not the athar. Yeah, the hadith about the man who didn't clean himself from the urine. He didn't clean himself from the ayn of the najasa, not the athar. Because the athar, i.e., he didn't clean himself from the, as in, he would go and urinate, and then basically lift his boxes and carry on. Do you understand? Okay, yes.
Could you define Izalatul Najas again?
Izalatul Najas is removing impurity. Okay? So let me just carry on, and then we're going to take more questions every stage. Every stage, I'll take some questions, inshallah ta'ala, okay? And if I didn't answer, just write the question down, we can take it at the end. Oh, ala suratihima. The fourth type of tahara, or the thing that comes under tahara, you look confused, akhi. Is it clear? You're good, yeah? Okay. Allah barik. I'm watching all your faces. I'm really engaging with you right now. Can you see my energy? Do you feel the energy? You know what it is? Fiqh, people don't get it. We're going to learn it, inshallah. We're going to see that this Shaafi'y madhab has barakah in it, inshallah ta'ala. Your whole life, you've been on something else. Now you come to a Shaafi'y class and you're going to get it. Does that make sense? Maybe it's because Imam Shaafi'y was from Ahlul Bayt. Do we love Ahlul Bayt? Do the Shia love Ahlul Bayt? No, they don't. They don't. They don't love Ahlul Bayt. We love Ahlul Bayt. We love Ahlul Bayt. So we have to mention these things. Does that make sense? Okay, pay attention. Pay attention. What does it mean, the fourth part of the definition? Oh, ala suratihima. It comes in the image of those two. Remember, every time we say those two, we're talking about raf'u hadath and izalatul najis. We're talking about uplifting a state of impurity or removing a physical impurity. So the third thing was in the meaning of those two. The fourth thing is in the image of those two. What do we mean when we say in the image of those two? What do we mean by that?
It's physically showing on the body.
No. What we mean by the image of those two, if I've done wudu and I haven't broken it, can I go back and do wudu again? Is it good to go back and do wudu again? But is that wudu, is it removing impurity? Is it removing me from a state of impurity? No. So it's in the form of that which uplifts impurity, but it doesn't. Does that make sense? And that's like doing your wudu a second time before salah. I.e., wudu is done when you are in a state of impurity. But if I haven't broken my wudu, I can go and do wudu again. That wudu looks like the same wudu that uplifts a person from a state of impurity. But it's not. It's just I'm doing it for more reward. To do wudu again. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Good. And izalatul najas, what comes in the form of izalatul najas? Najasah is removed by washing. For example, if a person has some najasah here, he can pour water on it and it what? It washes. If he pours water once and it's washed, is that enough? But he does it a second, third time. The second, third time, is that removing the najasah? No, the najasah is already gone. He's just what? He's just cleaning it extra, so it's in the form. It looks like it's removing najasah, but it's not. Then, my brothers and my sisters, Taharah is raf'u hadath, uplifting a state of. I'm summarizing the whole thing for you. Pay attention, brothers, please. Billah alaykum. Pay attention, wallahi. Pay attention. I'm going to summarize this whole thing for you. Now, I know you're a bit lost. Some of you are thinking, oh my days. But you're going to get it now. I'm going to summarize it for you, inshallah ta'ala. Remember, knowledge, if you don't get confused, you don't learn. It's actually scientifically proven that the first stage of learning something new is confusion. It's new, duh. You're not going to get it straight away. You have to get familiar with it. You have to wrestle with it. People get scared. I don't get it. No, I'm running away. Then you don't come back to class. You have to be patient with it. Tackle with it. Wrestle with it in your mind. Humble yourself. Ask Allah in your heart. Allah, I'm not getting this. Open it for me. Does that make sense? Inshallah, you're going to get it now. Taharah is 4 things. Number 1, raf'u hadath. Uplifting a state of impurity. Not a physical impurity, but a state. Izalatul najas. Removing a physical impurity. A physical impurity, even though I may be in a state of impurity. The third thing is, fi ma'nahuma. It comes in the meaning of those two. The meaning of those two is that after I do those two, I can pray. So there are things that allow me to pray, but I'm still in a state of hadath, or I still might have najasah on me. And that is tayammum and washing yourself in the toilet with only stone/tissue paper. The fourth thing is ala suratihima, in the image, in the way, in the look of those two. For example, doing wudu when you haven't broken it. This looks like something that uplifts the hadath, but this is not uplifting hadath because you're not in a state of hadath. It's just for extra reward, right? Or washing something where the najasah has been removed, second, third, fourth, time, the najasa is gone. It's not actually washing najasa anymore, but you keep washing it just extra clean, extra clean. Does that make sense? That is what Taharah is. My brothers and sisters, I can summarize all of that to you in just the first two. Raf'u hadath and izalatu najas. Those two summarize for you all of Taharah. Taharah is all about uplifting a state of impurity or removing a physical impurity. That's what Taharah is all about. And then if you don't find water, there's a substitute. If you can't do this, then maybe you can do that. أو في معناهما أو على صورتهما. These are exceptions. These are sub-branches. But all of Taharah really is about two things. When I get into a state of impurity, how do I uplift that state? How do I uplift the hadath from me? Major or minor. If I have physical impurity on me, how do I remove it? You understand? How do I remove it? That's what all of Taharah is about. Yes?
What does sweat classify as?
Sweat is completely fine. It's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to, if a person is sweating, they don't have to clean themselves, they don't have to wash themselves. You can, it's good, it's clean. I don't know if, is there bacteria in sweat? I'm just assuming. I don't know, when I sweat, I like to have a shower. But it's not like you can't pray with sweat or, anything like that. It's totally fine, inshallah. Mm-hmm.
When you have a smell of garlic and onions in your mouth, and you're going to go to pray, do you have to do wudu again or do you wash your mouth?
So that, we're going to come to it. We're going to come to it, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to come to it. Maybe we could talk about that privately after class. I just don't want to go off topic now because then these questions are going to start firing left, right, center like ping pong. Yes. Okay, good. It was a random question, isn't it? Yeah, mashallah. Okay, pay attention. Okay, go on.
How would you like determine the alpha?
Pardon?
How would you like determine the alpha?
The athar,
Yeah.
i.e. the physical thing's gone. Whatever's left now. If a person takes tissue and they've removed it. Now, there's a little bit of what? A residue. Does that make sense? That residue is the athar. That residue is the athar. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Good. Now we've defined Taharah. Are you ready to go into the first chapter of Taharah? Or shall we end the lesson here today, take a break and then start the 90 names of Allah and leave the first chapter of Taharah to next week? Or do you feel like you are man enough to go into the first chapter of Taharah? You spent a long part of your life not knowing how to wash yourself. Do you want to go another week not knowing how to do this? But if you actually think your brain is fried and you want to take it in doses, little bits of it, I'm happy to give you a break. We'll take a 15-minute break and we'll start the 9 names of Allah Azza wa Jal, because we're going to go for a serious name today. Ar-Rabb. Who would like to carry on? Who would like to take a break? Carry on?